Hi, Carver. Thank you
Hello.
for being today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. My pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited to be speaking with you on Film and Impact today. We don't have a lot of filmmakers from the Caribbean. We haven't had a lot of filmmakers from the Caribbean on the show so far.
Mm,
And persons working in the film industry, especially doing what you do. So I'm really happy to get into that with you and talk a bit about that. First,
yeah, man.
what I would like to ask you is what brought you to film? I know that you have a degree in film production and you've been producing films for like a certain number of years now, down in
Yeah,
Israel.
maybe 12 years, maybe.
Yeah. So tell me a bit like
Yeah,
what brought you to film? Like, were you always interested in film? Did you start somewhere else and then got to film?
right. Yeah, film always sort of had my attention from, since I was a little boy, looking at movies. You know, I started looking at movies a lot with my dad. I wouldn't say he's a total cinephile, but for some reason, he was, he felt as though the power of movies was something that we should be aware of, myself and my younger brother. And maybe when I was about 11, he would take us to movies every so often, but he took us to see a movie called Cry Freedom, which was a dramatic movie, a narrative film, but about true events in South Africa in the 80s. And one of the main characters was a real life freedom fighter called Steve Biko. And so, like that, the fact that this was a real person being dramatized and how emotional it was and how it made me reflect on the fact that I was a black boy at the time, but I grew to be a black man and would have to deal with some of these, this system or whatever. I sort of appreciated that my dad took me to see that film. And since then, it captured my imagination, the power of film, not only narrative films, but also the craft of documentary. I didn't immediately go to school to study film. I initially went to school to study communications. My first degree is in communications. And I felt as though that might be a bit of a nice balance between business and the creative sector where I could, hopefully use some communication skill to convince people to do maybe good things, as opposed to just buying Pepsodent, you know. That was my sort of initial thinking. But, as the realities of the world set in, I started working in business development and I was, doing all sorts of things that didn't really have anything to do with, you know, creating a space for people to understand the world better and themselves better. But I eventually got there. I got there after a while.
And how did you get there? And by get there, are you talking about Sustain TNT and the Green Screen
Yeah,
Festival?
yes, yes. So after I finished my degree in communications, I worked in marketing, I worked in business development, I lived in the Cayman Islands for a while, moved back to Trinidad, and I was here for maybe 10 years, slowly becoming a suit, you know, you know, which I realized I was like, wait, I'm not sure this is who I want to be. I'm not sure I want to be, looking at Excel spreadsheets about how much sales we got in what area and managing people to sell. I was like, what's going on? So I was like, okay, maybe now is a good time to go to film school. Because I had been thinking about, my initial plan, this initial idea I had to create media for social marketing purposes, to create media for behavior change. That's ultimately what I was keen on. And so I went to film school in the UK. And during that process, it sort of crystallized a lot of the activities or projects that I eventually created when I came back to Trinidad in 2009, 2010. And so, yes, the Green Screen Environmental Film Festival, which we started in 2011, is a major expression of that idea, you know, that media can be used to change hearts and minds. It can be used to build community. It can be used to, you know, almost change discussions, you know, change the direction in which discussions are going, you know, in a national space if you can reach enough people. So, so yeah, in 2011, I founded the Green Screen Environmental Film Festival, and of course, the festival is powered by an organization I also founded called Sustain TNT, which is really a non-profit that is interested in using media, different forms of media, for the same sort of behavior change ideals, you know, specifically with regard to sustainability. And as a film director and producer, I sort of, you know, navigate the space between the festival and production and trying to program and all of these things to hopefully, you know, educate the public in Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean about environmental and sustainability issues.
But what was it like starting the festival?
The
In
festival.
the beginning, did you have like pushback from anywhere because of like the central message of the festival, or was it difficult to get it started or to get funding for it specifically?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. You know, I think really when it started, you know, a lot of people were like, "Wow, you know, why this is kind of obvious. You know, why wasn't there an environmental film festival before? Why didn't somebody do that before?" Yeah, of course, it makes sense. You know,
That's great.
sorry.
That's you got pretty positive feedback right away.
Yeah, yeah. You know, our very first event, the very first event that Sustain TNT as an entity ever did was a film screening and talk, right? That had a party and had a band, you know, and so, you know, just sort of using entertainment ultimately. It's not just media, but using entertainment, you know, to bring people in and then sort of convince them of this message seemed like it made sense right away because of the response that we got to that very first event. I mean, the place was packed. Nobody had ever heard of us. Maybe the people knew who I was, but nobody had heard of Sustain TNT or anything like that. And all of these you know, artists and designers and environmentalists and well wishers and, you know, the community started to come together almost immediately. And so that sort of convinced me, no, this can't just be a one-off thing. We need to ensure that it's something that continues.
That's great. And did you encounter like difficulties from the factor that the festival was on an island in the Caribbean? Um, Things that were specifically linked to that?
Well, you know, I think there was a bit of a, you know, outside of the community who knows that this is important, and perhaps the reality that we can always connect what we are doing to the issue of climate change and, you know, education for that, which is obviously kind of a straight line. Apart from that, we are in Trinidad, and Trinidad's economy is based on oil and gas, and oil and gas economy, you know, as we can, you know, look back now, we realize that an oil and gas economy like ours doesn't always look at the environment as something that's important in terms of heritage, as something that's important in terms of intrinsic value, and something that's important in terms of, let's say, its economic impact, the economic impact of maintaining your environment to a particular standard or in a particular way. That sort of went over the head of a lot of people in Trinidad and Tobago. I think that has changed in the intervening period, in the intervening 10 years. You know, but I think initially, just the general approach to environmental issues. It's not just us. It wasn't about green screen. It wasn't about sustained TNT. It's about what pertains in Trinidad, how people think, how people care for or do not care for the environment. It was in a lot of ways is an uphill battle. You know,
And
yeah.
what is the future that you see for the festival? Like we right now, I feel like, and I think everything points towards that. So we're really going towards a future that's more, I hope, environmentally conscious, and where we really put in place things and learn to live in harmony with other beings as well as nature. But presently, there's still a lot of pushbacks from a lot of different sectors against
Mm-hmm,
this movement. So
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
you were talking about the economy in Trinidad, being oil based, and
Yeah.
is there? Do you see like a shift operating, like since you started the festival, like
Mm.
do you see like some?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I think that the shift has accelerated. There has been a bit of a shift over the last years. Okay, diversification, climate change adaptation. Sadly, a lot of it, is rhetoric, and but of course, it takes a long time for a ship to change direction. So, it's rhetoric, it's red tape, it's entrenched sort of ways of investing. Let's say where the money goes, that's entrenched. And it takes time to change that. But certainly with the advent of COVID and what we've been having to deal with over the last number of months, since almost the beginning of 2020, it's really forced policymakers, government actors, the private sector, everybody to really reflect on what's next. you know and for example, one of the pillars of development now that perhaps should have been a pillar of development for the last 20 years, but one of the pillars of development now in Trinidad and Tobago is digitization, this idea of the digital economy, right? Which makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. you know I wouldn't say it's too late. I hope it's not. But there is that thinking. There is thinking behind trying to develop capacity here for export of goods and services that are sustainable, that are environmentally focused and environmentally friendly. Has been a shift. There definitely has been a shift. Of course, it doesn't hurt that the price of oil and gas is lower than it's been for a long time. You know, that's sort of is a hell of a motivator as well. You know, but no, I mean the time has come. The time is here. You know, there's no doubt about it now. The time is here, and so if we do not make some very resolute, focused decisions that we can sort of ensure that stuck to, for at least the medium term. If we are able to do that, then I think we'll be okay. If we sort of dither, and if we maybe if we do any of that, we'll be in, as my grandmother used to say, we'll be in monkey pants. You know,
Uh, I
not good, not a good place to be.
Yeah, I think that whenever we have like something like this in the Caribbean, a festival like Green Street, it's always an opportunity for us to find like new ways to collaborate, especially when the message, the central message, is so strong and so timely,
Hmm.
relevant for us as Caribbean
Hmm.
islands in this time of climate change,
Yeah.
facing constantly the threat of losing, like coastal erosion and losing islands and monster storms, etc.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
have you seen like over the years since we festival, like some change in terms of collaborating with persons or creatives, artists, or even outside of the creative with the other Caribbean islands?
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a good question. I see some collaboration. I think that you know it's it's a question of affinity first of all. If people, now you have social media and stuff like that. Um, you can see people and you think they're doing some cool stuff. It's easy to reach out to them. It's easy to, you know, say, hey, I really like what you're doing. What about Wicked with me on this or that? So while it's easy to do, um, I don't think enough is happening of that. Like I've been, like, for example, green screen. I really want to take green screen to as many of the islands as possible. We collaborated with Timiri Film Festival in Guyana for a few years. So green screen was actually in Guyana with some of our films a couple of years ago, a couple consecutive years actually. And that was a really great experience. I'd never been to Guyana before, and so learning about Guyana and meeting filmmakers and getting to know Georgetown and and also being a sort of student of Caribbean history. Guyana is one of those places where a lot of things that were important for the or impacted the overall development of the Caribbean in a particular way. They happened in Guyana, or they happened in Guyana first, good and bad, right? So it was a fantastic experience, but I really would like to do more of that. And I think that we are, maybe because we are islands, we are somewhat still siloed, even though we have all of this technology that's supposed to be connecting us. I feel as though we feel incorrectly that my challenges in Trinidad are not your challenges in Martinique, are not the other person's challenges in Saint Lucia or Jamaica, and like Eric Williams, the first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, said, and talking about the West Indies Federation, 1 from 10 is zero. You know what I mean? Unless we really take it seriously and say, listen, it's going to benefit everybody. You know what I mean? It's going to benefit everybody if we come together and really collaborate. CARICOM, West Indies cricket, all of these things sort of reflect the fact that, yeah, the idea is great, but the execution is not always there, you know, because of politics, because of political or singular thinking, you know. And until we realize that, we are a region of a handful, a couple million people, and we would be better together. We would be better together culturally. We'd be better together economically in some ways. We'd be better together politically in some ways. Until we start to think about that, we'll still be looking inside. We'll still be looking internally, inside Trinidad, inside Jamaica, inside Barbados. You know, which is good because you have to self-reflect and you have to understand where you are. But there's so much to learn, and there's so much to see, and there's so much to experience from connecting meaningfully. You know, I think we have a lot more to do in that area as people operate in the creative space. There's a lot more to do.
I definitely agree with you on that point. I think maybe in the past we did not have so much the need to collaborate so strongly. I think people were more self-sufficient, but social models have changed. Paradigms have changed, and we've been forced to find like different ways to function
Mm-hmm.
as family units, socially, economically, and I
Mm-hmm.
think pushes us and it obliges us to use collaboration as one of the resources that we have, and as people in the country, whether we in the creative space or not, we have so many resources,
Yeah,
human
totally.
natural resources. it's just endless the possibilities. So
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree on that point. I'm hoping like with with events like the green screen and the like, and even just conversations like this, that we can keep
Mm-hmm.
broadening that conversation, keep putting like ourselves out there, and like get this
Yeah.
going, get people thinking more actively on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually
Yeah. I
collaborate.
mean,
Because sometimes, as you said, we don't even think about it. We don't even think that we can actually collaborate with somebody from another island, because it's there's somebody in a different country, there's water separating us, where we have the means of doing that just differently.
yeah. And I mean, another point, that shouldn't be understated is the reality that on these islands, when we do look outside of ourselves for inspiration, certainly as artists, many times we will look to America, we will look to Europe, we will look to other places, that have a limited cultural connection, to our voice, but we will still, and nothing is wrong with America. Well, you know what I mean. Something is wrong with America, but you know what I mean. Or Canada or Europe, and these places have there's opportunity for creative collaboration, of course, and the creative sectors are huge and well developed, and all of these things, and that's fantastic. But if we're talking about from the perspective of Caribbean creatives, and the Caribbean creative product, or the Caribbean aesthetic, whatever that is, and from that perspective, you know, there's still a lot to be mined and found and discovered, you know, in Haiti, and in Jamaica, in Guyana, in Trinidad. There's so much. There's so much still that we as artists haven't found and don't know about, and it would do us well if we took the time to find those things and do some research and ask some questions, and make connections and learn and share, more.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I think we always circle back to this issue, or this problematic. I think it's something that is problematic. It's always been problematic, and if we cannot find a way around it, it's going to become even problematic, because we're slowly like erasing ourselves without even realizing it.
Yeah.
This constant looking towards these places specifically,
Mm-hmm.
especially when these are the places that shape like dominant culture, and you know
Mm-hmm.
we slowly like replace the things that we
Our
by
Yeah,
dominant culture, and that includes the narratives that we see on screen, and
totally.
that's why I really think that our role in putting out stories that represent Caribbean people and Caribbean stories, Caribbean experiences are vital. And vital in the sense of, it's vital to our lives, it's vital to who we are, it's vital to our identity. Because a
Mm-hmm.
person whose identity, whose culture, and who they are is erased, it's not a person anymore. you
Yeah,
you're like a
they're
zombie.
lost.
You're
Mm-hmm.
empty. So I
Yeah.
definitely yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, just to not belabor that point, but that even comes back to what we are inspired to do in terms of our stories, and the kind of products that we decide to create. The reality is that if you have a story from a Caribbean filmmaker that is about the Caribbean, that embraces our humor, that embraces our food, and our love for our islands, and our, the islands cultures are different, but if it's authentic, I suppose is the point that I'm trying to make. I think that an authentic story would always have a better chance of reaching the same, audiences and spaces out there, which you need to. You can't just make a story for five people. You have to make a story that is sort of universal, even though it's rooted in the Caribbean space, as opposed to a Caribbean filmmaker you know, writing a script that anybody could have written and could have been shot anywhere. It's about whatever, you know, some romantic comedy about somebody working in a law firm and somebody else doing, you know what I mean? Like that stuff, you know, there's too much of that. You know, there's not enough of us, you know. But, you know, I don't want to belabor that point, but
Well, maybe it's a point that uh, merits belaboring.
probably.
No, it is something I think that really it's like a not a stitch in my side, but it's something that really pricks me, and because
Hmm.
I do think that sometimes, oftentimes, and I've seen it again and again, when we make stories, when we tell stories, we make films in our region about our experiences, and we make documentary films. I think one of the one of the like the feedback that we sometimes get is it's not as people are a bit they might be either confused or they compare it immediately to something that comes from like the US or Europe or somewhere else.
Hmm.
Usually something that of course it comes from like a big production, or it's compared to a style of storytelling that they
Yeah.
use, so they're going to say like, oh, why didn't it happen like that? Because that's what we've
Hmm.
seen. Or the not the characters, but the persons in the film might be criticized for
Hmm.
traits that are very Caribbean-like.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
While
Hmm.
people might appreciate certain humoristic things, there are other things that they might pinpoint that are very us, and I
Hmm. Hmm.
used to seeing ourselves on screen. We're not used to just, our normal experiences and our normal, life settings, etc. And
Yeah.
we push back against that, and we sort of like reject it because they're parts of ourselves that we reject. So,
Yeah. 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 I
there,
think that's true.
a bit of belaboring for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that's true, and I think that I can attest to sort of hearing that and receiving some of that type of feedback from some of the films that we've produced. You know, sometimes, like for example, I did a film about a fisherman in South Trinidad, short 15-minute documentary. You know, basically, it's a difficult time. The oil spills impacting him. His income is affected. You know, just basically a story of a guy who's struggling and trying to do right by his family. Ordinary Trinidadian guy. And I think people liked the film, but I suppose they like the surface of it, but I'm not sure that a lot of like they didn't necessarily get what I was trying to show, that this guy, is actually us. This guy is everybody. You know what I mean? This guy is not just a fisherman. That's not the point. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's a question of the sometimes audience education, and sort of getting people to understand. Oh, well, this is kind of where we're coming from here. This is not really what it's not really about what jersey he has on, what the color of his hat is. You know what I'm saying? That's not important.
I think you said something like really important. I think it's about re-educating people. So we don't want to tell people what to think, but
Hmm.
we want to open, at least show that there are different ways of telling stories. Because we come from different places, and just like people have different cultures, people look different, they um, do things different, etc. All of these
Hmm.
stories deserve to be told. All of them have yes, their place in that,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. So you talking about the thing of being the fisherman. Do you still make films, and like how do you balance making films, business, and like running a festival, because doing a festival is a full-time job. So how
Oh
do you
yeah.
balance all of that?
Well, I balance it with great difficulty. you know. Yeah. So I mean, to be honest, I I still make films, mostly commission films. 100% commercial films. I'll be honest. That is actually how I make a lot of my living. You know, which is fantastic because yeah, I do get to be a producer most days. Which I'm happy about. You know what I'm saying? I'm happy that I can, keep a roof over my head and feed my family and do all the things that I need to do, as a producer of film and as a festival producer. But I mean, to be fair, I do have other work, as a consultant, as a communication consultant, but it's all connected. It's all connected as far as I'm concerned. Ultimately, I'm managing projects and telling stories. That's ultimately what it's about. Yeah, I wish that I had more headspace right now to focus on more personal projects. You know, as I was telling you before, I have a young daughter. So you know, just the sort of weight of responsibility, is very much, always sort of tapping me on my shoulder, like, no, you should be doing something that's going to get you paid, sir. You should be putting your energy into something that is either A, going to put, food on the table, or B, give you more time to spend with your daughter. So, and to me, a personal project is one of those things that is more than likely going to do neither of those things. Luckily, the clients that I work with, as a filmmaker, I make films about the environment. I make films about social justice. I make films about things that are very important to me as a person and as a filmmaker, as a Caribbean person and as a filmmaker. So that kind of, it balances it out quite a bit, and I can sort of, try anyway to put my feeling, my spin, my impression, through some of the commission work that I do, you know. So, so yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy, in terms of the where I am right now. I guess, I'm pretty happy. I do want to do more stuff. I want to do more daring things, but maybe daring will come in a couple years when things are a little bit more settled, that I could, take a bit more chances.
Yeah, I think we all have this deep desire to do more daring things, and we have to balance, like, that aspect, the aspect of just living, being able to live, survive in society, and
Hmm.
do things that are really, that are dear to your heart, and that, fill you with
Yeah, I mean,
fire. And I think it's nice that you found that balance, being able to do films that are, environmentally centered. And
yeah. No, I'm lucky. I've had a couple years where, it's been well balanced. I'm often exhausted, but a lot of people are. So that's not. I'm not special, and sometimes it's good to be exhausted because it means that I'm working, you know. And the creative sector in this time of COVID has taken a serious hit, you know. It's taken a serious hit, and people who would have been working regularly, haven't been, and so it's a time now where I feel that, for example, you know, like, I don't have any projects beyond December, January. I don't have any projects, right? I'm confident that I will soon, but right now I don't, you know. And so, you know, you know, I spend a lot of time in business development, sort of creating opportunities, for Sustain TNT and for myself. I can say that a lot of people operating in creative space, they don't necessarily have the tools or have the wherewithal, or sort of thing, to sort of put that work in, effectively, you know. And there's something to be. I do think that there's something to be said for sort of what now, what happens now with the creative sector, and we as a sector need to be clever about it. You know what I mean? The world is changing, you know, and a lot of these skills that filmmakers in particular, filmmakers and content creators, you know, have, they are going to be needed. They are needed now. You know, but I do think that a lot of the powers that be and the people who might hold some of the purse strings or make some of the policy decisions don't fully understand that. I'll give an example. So, you know, right now, at least in Trinidad, there's no face-to-face school, right? So it's all virtual, right? The teachers are teaching from home and students are at their home, and that's how it is, right? And we expect, or I expect, that when schools eventually do reopen, that they are going to have a lot of holdovers from this period of time. There are a lot of things that are working, and there are a lot of things that are not working, and the technology will have to be leveraged. Now, teachers are not storytellers. Teachers are teachers, all right? Teachers are not content creators. Teachers are teachers, right? Teachers are focused on curriculum, discipline, you know, certain things that's their job, all right? But learning is not just about curriculum and it's not just about, you know, discipline. Learning is about, you know, experiences. Learning is about stories. Learning is about, ultimately, it's about content. You know, it's either between the pages of a book, or it's in an animation, or it's in a movie, or it's in a song, or it's in something that in this time you need to be deploying, you need to be employing to keep kids' attention and to keep them engaged with school and with learning. And I feel as though, you know, the creative sector in all of these islands, you know, needs to step up and say, hey, we have these skills. We've been digitizing content. We've been creating, we've been using digital media, you know, we've been, you know, sharing, you know, content online. We've been getting, you know, working out distribution. We've been doing all of these things for a while now. We're good at it, right? We need to be engaged to solve some of these, you know, education, content distribution problems. You know, I hope that we are able to do that. I hope that as a regional sector, we're able to say, well, now, if not now, when? You know, the orange economy is something that, you know, sort of been bandied about, and you know, it lives in the it lives in the policy papers, and it lives in the files of people in development agencies all throughout the region. You know, orange economy, orange economy, orange economy. Okay, you know, I'm not seeing much orange. You know, I'm not seeing much orange. You know, it's a question of facilitation, and it's a question of understanding the resources that you have. You know, and I don't think that we've got to that point yet. I think that we are creeping towards it when we should be running towards it. And I suppose maybe my job or my part is to try and to figure that out, and to try and figure out why the bridge is not being, why that why those points are not properly connected. You know.
Yeah. I think that we will end up running towards it in any case of the current situation. As a teacher myself, I think, and other teachers would probably be like, we are content creators. Uh, we create very specific content and we're very creative when we create content too. But it's true that the teachers, they're not going to create necessarily just in general authentic content that they would source usually from somewhere else, because we very often go source videos or films or music from that has been created by artists. So the idea of, you know, collaboration between like the creative and the education sector, like it's, I think it's indispensable. I've seen it happening in other countries. I've seen it online, forums that I participate in,
Yeah.
with teachers doing that, where they collaborate with artists and with creatives to find solutions, like to create, for example, online libraries and like
Mm-hmm.
new ways of bringing like educational content and authentic content also to kids. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an idea. Maybe like you can follow up with it. Um, just
Yeah, yeah.
propose it somewhere in the spaces that you have.
It's under discussion. It's under discussion as to how it would would go forward, how it would be presented, I suppose.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I have
So
a question. I know
yeah.
that Trinidad is one of the places in the Caribbean, like, one of the big islands in the Caribbean. So it's also one of the places where the film industry is more or the most developed. What's it like, in that industry compared to other Caribbean islands? Where I know, like, I'm from Dominica, for example, and in Martinique, more developed industry, more developed than in Dominica. Dominica is, very little developed.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken with
Mm-hmm.
film on other islands where not developed at all. So what's it like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like a vibrant, dynamic community.
Um. Well, I am very. I expect a lot, I suppose, because we have been so invested. I've been so invested, so I expect quite a lot, and so I I can imagine that somebody from Dominica would look at this sect in Trinidad and go like, yeah, it is pretty compared to Dominica. It's pretty robust. It's a lot going on. Um, but I want to see more. We do have a good cadre of filmmakers and people that work on productions. There is quite a bit of talent, that is for sure. There are a lot of talented filmmakers. There are a lot of talented crew members, and I think that the strategy by Film TT, who's like the film commission here, the strategy to try to get big productions to Trinidad and Tobago, um, to inject the big production budget into the local economy, and have people in the local space work on these productions to build their capacity. I think it is a sensible strategy. Um, but I do think that there needs to be more, uh, a different approach for local content. I think that local filmmakers need to feel as though they have access to an audience. And that is sort of facilitated a little bit better, um, formally with formal infrastructure. So that is facilitated a little bit better. Um, yeah, I think that as a working filmmaker, um, it's good. There's so much talent. So it's good for me. So if I want to put a crew together, I have a certain amount of confidence, in these people's abilities. That is really that is really critical. Um, you know, but I think that we all want to be able to do more, and to have a booming industry that is able to provide content not only for Trinidad and Tobago, but for all the Caribbean islands, and beyond, But it seems as though that is a little bit of a stumbling block because there's a lot of people working, a lot of the film, for example, right? So you have these really talented filmmakers who are using their skills to, yeah, to sell product, or to sell goodwill, from a company or agency, when perhaps their skills would be better deployed, creating a really cool, comedy, or something that could kind of show us up on the screen. I want to see more of that. I want to see more local content. I want to see better local content. And that's why we created the Very Short Shorts mobile film competition as part of Green Screen. That's been a super, project, and the response has been really outstanding. I'm surprised actually by how many submissions we've been getting year on year. It's been going up and up and up. Um, but you know, you have people. Once you have a phone, you can shoot a film. You know, it's as simple as that. It gets people thinking about the basics of filmmaking. You know what I mean? The basics of filmmaking. You don't need no fancy camera. You don't need none of that. You know, you make a very short film with your phone, and we distribute it, and you distribute it, and everybody gets to see it. You know, and we get to celebrate the fact that we're making stuff, we're doing stuff. You know, and it's getting out there. You know, so, you know, I think if there was more of that encouragement of local content, people to actually use it to express themselves socially, culturally, whatever, that it would do the industry a world of good.
I think that's amazing. I love that category in the festival, the very short shorts. Um, just
Yeah, very short shots. Yeah, yeah.
just as we're finishing up, I think there's one last question I'd like to ask you. For persons who might be thinking of starting a film festival on like a Caribbean island, what would be
Mm.
your advice to them from like everything you've learned doing your festival in Trinidad?
Hmm. Well, first of all, you really have to be passionate. You know what I mean? You have to be passionate about film. You know, you have to love film. You have to, you know, you have to pay attention to your programming, you know, because ultimately, you know, and your programming is related to your audience. So you have to love film, you have to understand who your audience is, and you have to pay a lot of attention to your programming, you know, because ultimately your product, you know, as a festival, your product is the films that you show ultimately, you know, especially now where like green screen is online. So yeah, we could curate experiences, but they're all, you know, they're still remote. You know, the meat of it is you know your content. You know, yeah, I think that you know film is something that you can use to say something. You can use it to make a statement. For example, you know, maybe it's important to you to embrace humor. You know, maybe it's not enough humor in the world. You know, maybe you want to have a film festival that focuses on comedies. You know, I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying, you know, you kind of have to have your heart behind your programming. You know what I'm saying? It can't just be, oh yeah, we don't have a film festival, you know, here, so we'll do a film festival. You know, but why are you doing it? You know, you really have to ask yourself why are you doing it. You know, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of moving parts. You know, and you need a good team. You know, one person cannot do a film festival. You know, that's impossible, right? Two people cannot do a film festival. That's impossible. You know, you need a good team. You need passionate people. And in order to get passionate people, you kind of need to be saying something. Your heart needs to be behind the idea. You know, whatever that is. You know. So yeah, you know, passion first, and everything else will flow after. I guess. I hope.
Well, I hope that that touches someone who has the passion of something, who wants to start
Something.
like
Yeah.
that. I think we need more of it in the Caribbean, and you know, we have more experience
Definitely.
on the scope of collaborating with Guyana, for example, because there's so many beautiful things that can come out of that. You know. Yeah.
I agree 100%.
So thank you so much, Carver, for joining me today. It was really lovely speaking with you. Thank you for sharing your experiences.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun talking about you know film and festivals and the Caribbean and our development and our future. You know, all of those things are very important to me. So I was happy to spend some time talking to you.